What's up, y'all, boy? This your boy Marlo. I'ma need y'all, boy, to follow me on Instagram because I about to be doing live interviews with the Geechee Gala people from Charleston and have them boys share some of their experiences and some of the history they learned from their peoples. So let's get right into this. Alright, listen, y'all boy know I gotta show y'all boy Charleston from the sky. Then I gotta show y'all boy the different neighborhoods before I start the story. But that's only gonna take about 30 or 40 seconds. You feel what I'm saying? I gotta show y'all boy how much I love the infrastructure and how the neighborhoods are set up. Now, that yellow area is where you find most of the rich white people at. That orange area is where I did the project babies. That's the east side. Now that blue area is where I did the west side on low G's and lefty them. Now that purple is back to green where I did the strategic hustle. And the pink is one of the last episodes I did on Bayside. That's the swamp folks. Now that green area is, I call that no man's land because all you find is train tracks and industrialized factories right there. Now, the episode I'm doing now is on Union Heights, this white area. That's the first neighborhood when you enter North Charleston. Yeah, Charleston got that simple structure on how they built the neighborhoods, and they did that on purpose, but I'm going to tell y'all why they did that in other videos. Right after the Civil War in 1861, more than 4.5 million Irish from Ireland arrived in America. Cayenne was only about 15 years old in 1875 when he and his whole family and other families from his neighborhood in Ireland would all hop on a fleet and come to America. They came to America because back in Ireland, the rent prices were too high and the landlords were very vicious. The harvest season had sucked and there was barely any jobs inside Ireland. So that what made them come to America. And they also brought the potato culture to America. Cayenne and his family would be able to work inside clothing factories and train stations because even though they were white, they were not Europeans. They were just Irish. Basically one step from being an outcast like the African Americans. While the Irish slaved inside the factories, the blacks were on the outside, inside the fields. Cayenne worked in a train station across a wide dirt path that is now known as Sproul Ave. The neighborhood across the street from the train station was called Union Heights. The Union Heights area was a plantation in the 1600s, the 1700s, and parts of the 1800s. It was officially established in 1910. The Union Heights area was very special because it was a small community surrounded by industrialized jobs and factories on both ends and north and south of the neighborhood. One of the earliest predominantly black communities from slavery time, the Europeans did not like the soggy and swampy lands and consider it valueless. Around 1875, when Cayenne first made it to America, African Americans started buying pieces of the land that was wet and soggy and swampy and soft. You see what I'm saying? The Civil War had just ended, so slaves were free and could have owned their own land now. What the whites called valueless, the blacks made it valuable. Right after the Civil War, Union Heights only had about 10 to 15 houses and little dirt paths that would weave throughout the neighborhood. One day in the early 1900s, when Cayenne would be working at the train station, he would take a break from work. Then he would walk through the Union Heights neighborhood. As he was walking the dirt path, he noticed that he was being followed by a Negro. The Negro name was Freeman, and the reason Freeman was following Cayenne was because Freeman family owned a few lots and land in the neighborhood, and Freeman was considered security. After the Civil War, nearly 40 years later, Freeman family and other black families were paid about $45 for helping inside the Civil War. And that's how they bought land. There was no electricity in the area, and there was only one water spigot owned by this guy named Ed Dosford, and he charged 25 cents for water. Freeman and Cayenne would get in a heated fist fight, and Freeman would be placed in the First North Area Jail. This jail was located what is now known as the Meeting Street side of the Union Heights neighborhood, and it sat between Hugo and Iron Street. Freeman would do 8 years and be released in the middle of the Prohibition period. The Prohibition period was from 1920 to 1933, and those were the years that manufacturing, importing, exporting, intoxicating liquor was illegal, just like marijuana is today. When Freeman was released, it seemed as though the whole world had changed. Before he got arrested, the Union Heights neighborhood had a few houses and dirt paths, but after his release, there were many streets and many houses on those streets now. Freeman would run into Cayenne and they would have a heated standoff, but Cayenne stuck his hand out and told Freeman he had a deal. Cayenne proceeded to teach Freeman how to make liquor and how to import, export, and manufacture the illegal intoxicants. By 1933, liquor had been legalized, so there would be really no money to make off it because they were now selling it inside the stores. Freeman would go back to living an honest life. He would have multiple children by one woman, and he would settle in the Union Heights area. From the 1930s to the 1960s, black families continued to buy up land and lots inside the Union Heights area until every street was filled with houses that were very close to each other. Being that the Naval Yard was close to the Union Heights area, it began to boom because the men working on the ships and the fighter planes and stuff like that, they would get off from by the river and come straight into the Height to enjoy the many barbershops, restaurants, movie theaters, fish markets, and stuff like that. But the many families who bought land on the Union Heights area, their names were like people like the Singletons, Greens, Milligans, Freyers, Manigaults, Youngs, Frasers, Taylors, Austins, Williams, Clarks, DeJours, Gibbs, Johnsons, Pringle, Gantz, Grants, Hamilton, and Wallace. Yeah. When the black people became like successful and they could afford it, the hike already had became a place where all the doctors, the black lawyers, the black teachers, the black entrepreneurs, the black preachers, the black entertainers, the skilled craftsmen, the laborers, they all moved to the Height and made Union Heights their home. All right, now, Union Heights was one of the first places that had everything. Union Heights had a beauty shop, a barber shop, restaurants, funeral homes, motels, the fish market, a movie theater, the dry cleaners, mom and pop stores, an ice cream parlor, car garages, drugstores, nightclubs. They even had a music school and a preschool program that flourished inside the Union Heights neighborhood. So yeah, the Union Heights neighborhood always was a well put together black community. What's up, y'all, boy? I just broke down that history for the Union Heights neighborhood in North Charleston, one of the first neighborhoods you enter when you leave from downtown Charleston. All right, now basically, if you didn't understand the little story I just gave you, basically I'm telling you from the 1600s and the 1700s, the hype been kind of building itself up. It was like a little swampland. It was soggy. The grass and the ground was soggy and wet. And the white people didn't really want it, but the black people took it and did their thing with it. Now, basically, in my story, what I was saying was that since the 1800s, the hype was building itself up, and then the Irish came and flooded the neighborhood with alcohol, and they started flooding their neighborhood with a little bit of violence, because if you know about the Irish, then you know about the Irish mob. You see what I'm saying? That's where the RICO laws came from. Yeah, that's where all that came from. So after the Prohibition in 1933 and alcohol became illegal, the black people started building the hike up even more. You see what I'm saying? I'm talking about the hike was the place to be. I'm talking about you had everything on the hike. The barbershops, the beauty parlors, the movie theaters, everything was on the hike. You see what I'm saying? So throughout the 60s, after Dr. King got killed, the 70s, they would introduce the black neighborhoods to heroin. And that's why I talk about that in my story, because most of the people know what happened from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s. 70s, they brought the heroin. The 80s, they brought the crack. The 90s, they started this. The 90s and the 2000s, they started naming all the black kids ADHD and giving them boy medicine and stuff. But you giving them boy the same medicine that's inside the drugs from the 70s and the 80s. But my take on the hikers, the modern day hikers, they got that hustle. You see what I'm saying? And the hustle come from 200 years ago. When you had 100 years ago, when you had all these black successful people inside this neighborhood. So when they introduced the drugs and the violence, you don't think these smart people still gonna know how to be smart and use that to hustle? You see what I'm saying? So from the 70s to the 80s, that's just 40 years later. You see what I'm saying? So the people on the hype, they still got that I'm gonna say professionalism when it comes down to hustling. You see what I'm saying? And another thing about the hype, they still got that traditional thing going on. Like most neighborhoods, if you leave for 10 years and you come back, you see a whole new wave of people. The hype has the best timing when it comes to nobody going nowhere. You can leave for 15, 20 years and come back and still see the same people, still see the same females, still see the same, And another thing about the hype, you don't really hear too much drama going on. You don't really hear too much people, too much homeboys, murking homeboys. You see what I'm saying? When you think about the hype, you gotta kind of think about loyalty, trust, family, cookouts, big block parties, and you gotta think of the holiday spirit when you think of the hype. Like if you thinking about a neighborhood that's full of holiday spirit, go to the hype. You see what I'm saying? But that's my take on the Union Heights area. Don't forget to like my video, share the video, leave a comment, and make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Sticks Movement, man. This your boy Marlo. I out.